I'm Atira. Welcome to my journey in the art of perfumery, living life, and finding beauty and inspiration in every day. In perfumery, as you know, there is an abundance of resources, both synthetic as well as naturals, that are used to make that finished fragrance. But when I mention the resource of tobacco, what comes to your mind? You may draw from a memory of that warm vanilla note coming from grandfather's pipe, or you may draw a thought of that pungent ashy note coming from a cigarette. And your olfactory senses may also stir you toward the sweet thoughts of a fine fragrance that is tobacco inspired. A couple that of course come to my mind would be Tom Ford's Vanilla Vanille, as well as Elizabeth and James' Nirvana Amethyst. So in today's journey, we're going to do two things. We're going to look at some aroma chemicals that are tobacco inspired by creatingperfume.com. But first I want to dig deeper into the roots of this plant. And I mean much deeper than the roots that are in the soil of this field. I want to look at the history, and most specifically the Native American sacred origin of the tobacco plant. And I think you will be amazed and inspired by the near parallel that the origin and sacred use of tobacco has to the origin and sacred use of perfume. To do that, we are going to be traveling to a most sacred place. It is a historically pinpointed, documented location along the Trail of Tears. Welcome to the Trail of Tears Commemorative Park. It is one of the few documented sites of the actual trail and campsites used during the forced removal of the Cherokee people to Indian Territory. It was used as an encampment in 1838 and 1839. This park is the burial site for two Cherokee chiefs who died during the removal, Bly Smith and White Path. This long, cruel relocation is most known as the Trail of Tears, but by Native Americans it's most sacredly known as the trail where they cried. Every year on the first full weekend after Labor Day, the Trail of Tears Commission sponsors an intertribal powwow at the park. There, Native American people come to celebrate their rich heritage with others by sharing their traditions, dances, crafts, and sacred stories. From the moment you arrive at this place, you are enveloped by the Native American culture. Being surrounded by the sustaining rhythm of the tribal drums, their songs echo through the air like a cleansing, renewing wind. And soon it becomes apparent that you are witnessing something much more than you imagined. While each tribal nation displays the diversity of their own traditions, the beauty truly unveils itself as each nation comes together in unity to communicate one common message: their unified love and worship for their Creator, thankfulness for their blessings, and their unwavering calling to bring healing and hope to our broken world. As I watched the beautiful events of the day, I was committed to find just the right Native American to ask, to share their explanation of the sacred use of tobacco. But my shyness and my lack of boldness clouded my vision that I had planted in my mind, and it kept me from my goal. So I decided to take a break from the heat of the sun and the sounds of the crowd, and I slipped away to the opposite side of the park, about a half-mile away, to seek clarity in the coolness and quiet of the shade. I began to evaluate the vision that I had to present the sacred use of tobacco in the most colorful, dramatic, yet most authentic way possible. And I was certain that I would find that opportunity by being surrounded and deeply immersed in the display of their culture, their song, and their dance. And as I walked, I found the memorial which honors the two fallen Cherokee Indian chiefs, Fly Smith and White Path, and I was certain that there would be no marked graves given the cruel nature of this moment in history. But it was then, as I was ascending a set of stairs leading to the top of a small hill just behind the memorial, that the answer to my questions and the opportunity found me. It was in that moment that I found myself standing on sacred ground, because I was in the presence of the marked graves of these two warriors. And not only were they marked, but there were 4 more marked graves of lives lost to this tragic account in time. And it was in the stillness of this moment, as I could hear quietly and reverently the beating of the drums just in the distance, a man approached the same sacred ground with humility and respect. With physical patterned scars on his body expressing his native culture, and with his young daughter in tow, he gently reached into his pocket and he withdrew a handful of sacred tobacco. No expectation of pomp and circumstance or glory, but with the dignity and integrity of a warrior, he knelt in honor and respect, and he prayed. Then he gave his offering of tobacco to each of those buried here. And it was in that moment when I knew that our paths were divinely crossed at this resting place. My chains of shyness broke, and my clouded vision became clear as he spoke.
Can you tell me your explanation of the sacred use of tobacco?
The way I remember it, I was about 4 years old. At a reburial ceremony in Union County, Kentucky. My dad was full-blood Seminole. Got me and brought me to that, and I really just remember crying and putting tobacco on fires, you know. That's my personal experience with it. That's what it means to me, you know, is just a connection, just a way to connect. Externally, patriotism. Somebody else's experience is probably different than mine. Mine's really personal. So I use tobacco offer it. It's just a way for me to connect with my father and my grandfathers and God, you know, it's just pure and simple and natural. That's somebody else would probably tell you something totally different.
And I can see you place some tobacco on the grave of this Cherokee Indian chief that died and was buried here on the trail. What was your purpose in placing that on his site?
I don't know if I can put it into words. It's just something I have to do. Something I'm drawn to do. Something my daddy told me was showed me was right to do. He never told me to. I just followed his example and showed my kids what he told me. Because he can't tell them. His fathers can't tell them. All I can do is tell them. Make sure they get it from me.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking from your heart. And your name, sir?
My name's Robert Dean.
Robert Dean. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Okay.
Words are just so inadequate to express what I felt as I left that sacred place. You see, for this video, I researched and discovered the origin and sacred use of tobacco. But from the age of 4, he vividly recalls the same origin and sacred use through his ceremonial practice of placing it on a fire as an offering which lifts the prayers of the people toward heaven through smoke. I understood it and even connected to it. But to have it so divinely unfold before my very eyes, it became much more than just a connection, because it illuminated the spiritual relationship that I have with my Creator. Know that the meeting with this man was not planned by me. So having the honor to witness his humble and genuine offering of tobacco, this experience will forever be a reminder that in order to be a pleasing and fragrant aroma, it is necessary that we always offer ourselves in purity of heart and soul.
It's just pure and simple and natural.
So, as you can see, tobacco's most sacred origin is both beautiful as well as inspirational. And for me, the inspiration becomes even more profound when I see how it so perfectly parallels itself to the same sacred origin of perfume. Now, to see how the two so unmistakably intertwine, we're going to take a look now at perfume, and we're going to see how it shares the same most beautiful sacred qualities of tobacco. And in order to do that, we're going to take yet another journey, but much farther back in time and on the other side of the world. The earliest records of perfume date back to about 2000 BC in Egypt, where they too would use their elements as a burnt offering, where that fragrant aroma would lift their prayers toward heaven, again through smoke. They would do this in celebration, ask for protection, and also for respect in times of benevolence. One incredible example of this is biblically recorded in the book of Exodus, where God used a man named Moses to lead his people out of Egyptian slavery. And as they journeyed through the wilderness, God gave specific instructions to build a tabernacle or a sanctuary that would be a most holy place for God to dwell in their midst. And it was to be so sacred that God gave specific, detailed instructions that included the dimensions, the materials to be used, as well as articles of furnishings that would be contained within it. Now, staying true to the biblical details, a replica of this tabernacle stands today in the Timnah Valley that's located in southern Israel. Now let's go there and see how perfume played such an important role in this most sacred place.
As you enter the tabernacle, the first two furnishings were the bronze altar of burnt sacrifice and the bronze laver. Then, upon entering the tent of meeting, 3 more furnishings were placed. The first 2 were the golden candlestick or menorah and the table of showbread. Now a veil separated or divided this part of the tent from its innermost part, which was called the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was placed and where God's presence would be. But just before passing through the veil stood the third furnishing, which was called the altar of incense. Exodus chapter 30, verses 1 through 10 details its construction, and its purpose was to be an altar to burn incense. Now verse 34 says, "Take fragrant spices of gum resin, which was stacte, onycha, and galbanum, and pure frankincense, all in equal amounts, and make a fragrant blend, and it is to be salted, pure, and sacred. Now grind some of it to a powder and place it in front of the Ark of the Covenant law in the tent of meeting, where I will meet with you, and it will be most holy to you."
Every element of the tabernacle was very important, which is why God was so specific as to the details of the design, the construction, but especially the purpose and what each element represented. And when they all came together, they blended perfectly to complete a most beautiful message for God's people to carry with them. But for our journey today, as we focus on the altar of incense, there's one more detail that I'd like to share, and it fascinates me, and will you as well, especially if you are a perfumer. You see, the instructions and the details were so complete that God also included the blending of the materials that was to be used to create the incense to be burned. You see, not just any hands could perform this task, because God also instructed that this work be carried out by the hands of a perfumer. So as you can see, it is very clear that the origin and sacred use of perfume and the origin and sacred use of tobacco are truly more than just comparable or even parallel. They are really one and the same in that they were each divinely called to use elements that they were each instructed to place on a fire that would create a pure, sweet, and fragrant aroma that would represent the prayers of the people and be lifted toward heaven through smoke, which is why the very word perfume even exists, because it is for this history, friends, that the word perfume is of Latin origin, which means perfumus, or through smoke. So as we come to a close in today's journey together, as you can see, the powwow is over. The people have long since gone. And even the tobacco that you saw earlier in this video has now long since been harvested. But the timeless message that was carried so many years ago remains true today. And we're all called together to carry that same message forward. And that message is this: always know that before we can offer ourselves as a pleasing, sweet, and fragrant aroma, we must first be sure that we are pure of heart and soul in our motives and in all that we do. Which is why I also end each and every video journey with you by saying, remember that the most beautiful thing you can create is found within you. Always share the best of who you are and what you have with others. share it abundantly, and make this world a beautiful, beautiful place.